Okay. Hello, YouTube. Hope you guys are doing well. I kind of wanted to take this time actually to gather my thoughts. I've had quite enough time since the release of the expansion, since the announcement of the upcoming Secrets of the Obscure expansion. I was not used to getting 5 or 6 blog posts every day. Okay. That day was kind of a lot of information to digest. I didn't have time to recollect my thoughts. But I actually want to do this video because I actually want to go back through the context of how the expansion model used to be in Guild Wars 2. What were drawbacks, what were good things, and then why we're in the situation that we are right now in. And going forward, hopefully, maybe these expansions could be the best thing that takes Guild Wars 2 forward. So I want to convey all of that by going through the past, the present, what to expect in the future, and of course, going through a little bit of the expansion features themselves, because there's quite a lot to go in here, right? There's quite a lot to dig in. So let's begin. So to start with, I want to actually go back and really just dial it a little bit. So how did the old system work out? Guild Wars 2 used to rely on these things called living world seasons, right? And the idea was that when we first got the game released in 2012, it was going to be this living, breathing world that kind of evolved as they released episodes. And the first season was a little bit chaotic. You had to always log in every 2 weeks, otherwise you missed the update. There was quite some pressure there to actually log in to play the game, and if you missed it, the content was gone, but the world changed and you didn't know the context if you weren't playing at the time. Then we eventually got Living World Season 2, which got us as a sort of way to move it towards the story, which the story was going to be Heart of Thorns, which was getting through Heart of Thorns. And Heart of Thorns was probably the biggest expansion. I think to this day, it's still the biggest expansion we've received in Guild Wars 2, because this expansion is what introduced us to Masteries. We've gotten the elite specs out of this expansion, which of course have been introduced in expansions after Heart of Thorns. We got Guild Hall content, sort of, out of the expansion. And we also had quite a few other, kind of things that introduced long-term uses, like the Masteries especially, like they were sort of like branded into post future content as well in different things. So we got quite a lot in the Heart of Thorns expansion. The story was also pretty okay. I think I found the story okay. And like the long story, and this will be a very important point later, the long story of Guild Wars 2 has always been about the Elder Dragons. This has kind of consumed most of the storytelling in Guild Wars 2, if not 99%. So after Heart of Thorns, we got Living World Season 3, which was pretty good. I think the plot was a little bit all over the place, but pretty good pretty good Living World. We had some maps there, and that was the formula going forward with some of the Living World, is that they would add basically maps towards the game. So they were kind of bite-sized expansions that you can consume. Then we had a beautiful Path of Fire that released with mounts as the selling point of the expansion. Much more explorable maps, where Heart of Thorns was more, you could say, open world, meta intensive maps. Path of Fire was more of like the explorable expansion, right? So that was basically how you could compare them. And then we had Living World Season 4, which was actually a great season. Probably the best season and story in the game, and it's still continuing the same Elder Dragon story, but that season itself was really good. We actually got 2 mounts from that. We actually got the Skyscale and the Roller Beetle mount, 2 of the best mounts that we can get. Path of Fire actually had a secret mount as well, the Griffin, which is also a very top tier mount. So all in all, things were looking good. And now the problem was we also had, I believe this was the year of the layoffs. The great layoff year in Arena, unfortunately, was not looking good. So what happened? They came out with Ice Boot Saga, or otherwise known as Living World Season 5. Now, this was supposed to be a game-changing announcement, because the saga was supposed to be a long-term living world. And this was going to be, they were going to be introducing pretty much expansion-like features in the saga. And this was supposed to be a revolutionary way of getting things done. Unfortunately, that did not seem to be the case, because midway into the Living World Season 5, we got thrown with they're gonna scrap it up because there's gonna be focus on an expansion, which at this point people speculated is definitely the Canthan expansion, which a lot of people didn't even think was gonna be possible because of certain things that caused some hesitancy from ANET to maybe do a Canthan expansion. So we eventually do end up getting Icebrood Saga a little bit on the downside. We got a conclusion into 2 dragons that were supposed to be this big thing. And I'm just going to say some spoilers here. So maybe close a bit for a bit. So the spoiler is we had Primordus and Jormag in the Icebrood Saga, and they were like literally destroyed within literally just a few episodes. So what was supposed to be maybe a long-term thing just ended up into one giant anticlimactic meta event that just destroyed 2 dragons. And yeah, I mean, whatever the chat says, yes, basically the dragons, like they took each other out. Let's just say that they took each other out. So it was a little bit disappointing because that was a very good story to start with. It had a very good start, eventually just didn't work out well. But it was necessary because we needed to go full development into End of Dragons. The Canthan expansion, the place in Tyria that nobody thought we would go to, right here. We were always in this area in the game. And then we've gone through this area here with Heart of Thorns. The Living Worlds have opened up also more places. Path of Fire opened us to more places around this area. And then this part right here has always been something that we were dreaming to go to. And we finally got that wish in the Canthan expansion, End of Dragons. So there was quite a lot that we got to get to see. And not only were these expansions increasing specs, we've had, and there's another point into the specializations. We got to go to different maps. We've even gotten our best open world map to date, Dragon's End. Even after the brutal nerf, it's still probably one of the best open world maps ever in terms of like a engaging boss fight. But now, where does this leave us? We've had this kind of trajectory where Aina wanted to really throw expansions and balance free content. And the Living World, honestly, the best way to brand them were, DLC content. The unfortunate thing is they were honestly holding back the game because ANET was giving away free kind of expansion-like features in an update that you can get for free if you logged in within a 2 to 3 month duration of its release. And meaning it's on your account forever. You can actually access that episode whenever it came out for a season. And the only time you'd have to pay for it is if after that 2 to 3 month duration, whenever it was over, then you'd have to buy it through gems in the gem store. But they were basically giving away stuff for free. And the DLCs, it was hard to rebrand them as DLCs. And it's just marketing standpoint didn't make sense. And especially with the expansions, it was taking too long to develop because they were trying to juggle this Living World and expansion-like content from 2 different aspects. And it's clear the studio just aren't able to do that. So this brings us here. This brings us right now, right to Secrets of the Obscure. This is the new model of expansions that they're going to go forward with, in the sense that they are going to release a single expansion where it will have a initial release, and then throughout a quarterly set of updates, they're going to add more content to the expansion. And then once that expansion wraps up, right around the corner, we're going to have the next expansion ready to go. And this is because they're switching away the model of storytelling here. Guild Wars 2 has pretty much had a Elder Dragon storyline from the start of the game all the way to End of Dragons. That saga has taken 10 years of storytelling. So we're kind of always in the sense of in this Elder Dragon story, where is it going to go forward? And there's a beauty with long-term storytelling. I enjoy long-term storytelling. And the drawbacks is, of course, for new players to get into the game and to get into a certain expansion. If they do want to do the story, they have all this load of story that they haven't done. And so they have to like either do it from the start, or they'd have to just, you know what, I'm going to spoil the story for myself. I'm going to start from this middle point here. So it kind of set things up. And now the change of pace is going to be, it's going to be a self-contained expansion. So the way it's going to work is they're going to release an expansion. It's going to have its own self-contained story. And then once that's done, it's going to have another expansion right out the corner, and that's also going to have its self-contained story. So switching from long-term to self-contained, honestly, is a change of pace for Guild Wars 2. And this is borrowing a little bit from, of course, other MMOs. World of Warcraft is known to do this very well, where they have self-contained expansions, and there are bits and pieces that link previous storylines from previous expansions. But in the most part, you can always jump into any World of Warcraft expansion without having to know all the information beforehand. So it made it easier for any new player to jump in. And I think for Guild Wars 2, this is a long-term decision that needs to be done, because it's a change of pace, and it's going to be maybe release the expansions at this faster rate that they want to do this. So that being said, what are some of the features that they can do? Right? They've already released mounts, masteries. Well, with that going on, they actually have quite a few in this expansion. The biggest one is the Weapon Master training. So I think this is a pretty good and bad thing at the same time. The good is that they've just basically gone Wild West. They don't need any of this kind of stuff now. They don't need to worry about creating elite specializations. And honestly, the pressure of creating a new elite spec is a lot for an expansion. To have one every single time, I think this relieves the pressure of doing that. And we have 3 elite specializations at this point, one core class and 3 elite specs, and that's 9 classes that have that, right? I think we've pretty much had is my Windows giving errors? It's giving me like updates and stuff. I don't know why. It's not you, it's me, chat. It's not your window, it's my Windows 10. So yeah. So the Weapon Master training, I think the good thing is that it kind of removes this pressure of new elite specs. The bad thing is, and I briefly touched upon this, is that there are going to be some drawbacks. For example, weapons now, like if they're going to balance something on a class, you can't use weapon coefficients, because what you change on this weapon will also change on the other classes now. And not just before, it used to be just specific to a few classes now, or a few specs. Now is specific to everything, right? And this causes them to have to maybe balance the traits a lot more, which means that there's more pressure on them to balance the traits, and it's just a much harder thing to do when you put all of that balancing into that sort of context. Like for example, what's a good example? Yeah, for example, right now people are saying Vindicator shortbow is kind of broken, very good, but it's very bad on Renegade. So if they want to fix that, they have to do it without adjusting shortbow. They have to adjust Renegade traits. They can't actually touch the weapons, which creates a lot of problems. Now, the good thing with Weapon Master training is once they figure out the kinks and stuff, I think it's going to be easier to balance in the long term. But once they do like 1 or 2 balances to really figure it out, it's sort of like they'll take care of it, and then they won't have to worry too much about it again later on. It's just going to be something of playing around with, right? Just playing around with the meta, like giving turns to classes and stuff. So it is a problem, but when they manage to balance it, eventually it can sort of go away. Now, what are sort of the rewards that are coming into the expansion? So we have implementations of more masteries, Skyscale. I actually like this, that you actually have more mastery things to unlock in the new expansions if you've done them from previous expansions. So meaning someone who's already done the Skyscale in the previous expansion, I should say, the Living World Season 4, will have more stuff if you have the mastery tracks mastered. So what does this mean? The reason why I'm saying this is because in the new expansion, they're actually giving away the Skyscale as an unlock in the new expansion. That means if you have already done the Skyscale from Living World Season 4, you actually have bonus things going on here because you've completed previous content. So this means new players could be encouraged to go back and complete previous content to upgrade their Skyscale from the previous part of the game. And that's pretty good. I think that's a very good change. That kind of lets a little bit of longevity from older stuff. Now, there is going to be a couple of other masteries that we'll hear about. So the mastery system is not going to be done away too much. Some of them will even link directly to rewards. this is a norm. I don't expect that this changes from any expansion. I think they'll have to have that. Masteries has been a key thing for them. It's just figuring out what to keep doing in the game, right? I think that's really what it's been at this point, honestly, going to get to. Now, what do you expect from an expansion? So when they release an expansion, it's going to be, you'll get the storyline, you'll get 2 maps with the expansion, you'll get 2 strikes and 1 fractal. And then in the quarterly releases, you're going to get the CMs for those strikes and the fractal. I believe another part of the map or a 3rd map opening. And then more story, of course, that leads up to the finale, hopefully. And then more rewards and more things going on. And that's what you could expect of the expansion. Now, this might be less, but it's actually better, I think, now. So before we had to wait 2 to 3 months for an expansion, 2 to 3 years for an expansion, and in between we did have Living World seasons, but a lot of those seasons were hit and miss, especially the episodes, because it's very little content that you can give in an episode, right? The seasons as a whole are pretty big chunk, but the episodes when they were releasing, if you're playing and keeping up with the game, it's not much to sustain you. So I think this would be better the way that they're doing it now, because you're going to get less content, but at a faster pace. So just as they're done, the next one's out right around the corner. So I think this helps keep the pace fresh and honestly lessens the load on the studio. Rewards wise, I actually like this one reward here where this is actually taking a page out of the vault system. WoW has a very similar system as well, where you're basically going to pretty much have daily, weekly, quarterly objectives to finish that will lead into basically getting some cool rewards. Some of them that can be in PvP, PvE, World versus World, variety, a mix of them. And they're basically going to help get you rewards even from the gem store. And this will honestly, this is a big change. I think this is like the best way to describe it is like it's a free battle pass, right? You're going to earn rewards from playing the game. In however way that you play it, completing these objectives. Some of these rewards will be crafting materials, gold, mystic coins, legendary crafting, starting kits, and more. Now, one thing I think they need to be careful is, honestly, they need more syncs, because like they're adding all of this, and I have to say this from a economy standpoint, this is good, but needs balance as well. I think eventually you'll run into like a very bad phase where we're going with right now, where a lot of items are so cheap, it's kind of like meaningless, right? Which means that the people who, let's say, have something specific, but then want to sell stuff or materials for something else, are going to need to grind more of those materials to be able to sell them to continue doing something else on the side. The benefit is it's cheap, so it's easier to acquire, but the disadvantage is eventually you need the gold for something else. And there's not... From history in Guild Wars 2, the gold making is not the best. So they need to balance the syncs very well. Otherwise, this can turn into very much similar to End of Dragons, where the legendaries, the Gen 3 or Arena legendaries, have very little syncs. They're very easy to do. They're like 1,200 gold to craft. They're not that much. They're not that difficult. But not enough syncs cause them to now eventually tank. And now a lot of materials are pretty much at a very, very low rate. Ectos are very cheap. D6s are very cheap. So a lot of people who already are done with the weapons but maybe want to do something else, people who didn't have their legendary armor or just don't have a few other weapons they want to do, are not going to be able to get more bang for their buck if they're selling any of this stuff. So that's kind of needed. And yes, I am actually going to touch on the legendary armor. Yes, there is something cool, open world legendary armor. I'm actually very happy for this. I was like, look at that. That's so... Look at this amazing art. You got your in-game Scorpion cosplay right here, okay? I'm okay with the open world legendary armor. I actually saw some people on the forums and I saw some people on Twitter actually complaining that why do we have open world legendary armor? Nobody wants to raid. People need to be out of their comfort. I think this is a good change. I don't think this is bad. I think legendary open world armor is okay. There's open world is literally where this game shines the most, right? Like there's no other MMO that does open world better than Guild Wars 2. I actually think this is a very good change. So yeah, light one looks like an outfit. To be honest, I'm not a fan of light armor anyway, but yeah. So is you piss that's better than raid armor. It kind of looks really good, to be honest. So I think open world armor is good, and while that is a sync, it needs to have a lot more, you know. EOD Gen 3 weapons did not really require that much of, like, honestly, they're barely a sync. Arena legendaries are like bare basics of crafting materials. Whereas this one, we don't know. But if it's something like the EOD ones, then it's going to be a problem similar to what we have now, where everything has just been on a downward trend in the economy. So, and that just leads into more people not being able to get more gold or whatever in the farming time that they're dedicating, right? Playing the game even. So I actually am very much a fan of the open world legendary armor. I think it's great. It's about time we had one. People need to start treating open world like a part of the game, because honestly, it is, right? This is the best place. This is the part in the game that shines the most. So I think with all of that, I think my only issues would have to be this. It has to be this balancing, right? You've removed the idea that you don't need to take the pressure off elite specs. And honestly, we don't need more elite specs. I think at this point, we're having a problem trying to even make the existing ones unique. And that's been a problem where every elite spec now has almost everything it could do for itself. And it's really removed the uniqueness of different specializations. So I don't think we need more until they can figure out something that makes an elite spec unique. Why is this better? Right? Now, what does that mean going forward? Like, sure, we're getting a new open world legendary in this expansion. We're getting weapon master training in this expansion, where basically all the weapons are up for grabs. Like, you don't have to be a specific spec line to get them, right? They could be anything like this. So something similar to this. This is what we're going to get. We're going to get 2 maps and all of that. The vault system, okay, that's going to be in this expansion. I think that doesn't have to mean that the next expansion after Secrets of the Obscure needs to also do that kind of stuff, right? I don't expect every expansion needs to do groundbreaking things. At this point, there's very little groundbreaking things that ANET can introduce. We already have mounts. We already have masteries. The legendary armory is the biggest QOL for legendary armory or legendary things. Very little QOL is going to end up happening. We have pretty much a good build system. It's very little that we require. So I think the next expansions will probably focus on just finding more masteries that they can come up with, and they could even be exclusive to that expansion. I think that's fine. Someone said combining elite specs. That at that point is going to be the other biggest thing, but that is its own balance issues with its own thing. The rewards, I think they'll just keep expanding to the Wizard's Vault. They'll just keep expanding to getting maybe other things obtainable from previous expansions into the new ones. Now the runes, I have to wonder like how they're gonna balance the legendary runes, because they're basically doing away with legendary runes for relics, and that means people who've already gotten their legendary runes are kind of in like a heavy in the deep end now for this. Like, what do you do to compensate them? It's similar to legendary armory for people who used to have like 8 or 9 legendary sets of armor. How do you compensate them, right? So I think that's going to be interesting to see. And then the one thing I want to see is that what can they do with the relics? Because I'd rather you don't have something be craftable, but then the purchased version of it is cheaper to go. This is especially with Ascended gear. Right now, nobody crafts Ascended gear. You just get it through playing the game, rendering the crafting of it useless, right? So I do want them to push a bit more into crafting so that you can actually make use of the feature of crafting, right? I think having everything be available in 8 different ways kind of diminishes the way that you want to, you know, like if you're going to do like, you know, relics require recipes to craft, but then you can just make it through purchasing something. It kind of does away with the point. So I definitely want them to focus more on crafting and dedicate a bit more things that are like, okay, you're going to have to craft this. You can get the items from doing content, like it drops or stuff like that, or you can purchase stuff, but put focus into the crafting. Don't have something as an option and then just have it that you can just get it a different way. That kind of diminishes crafting, honestly. So, and that's been a problem for many things in the game, right? Right now, like, you only craft runes and sigils. Very few people even craft them. They just buy them off the trading post. Same with legendary armor. It's the only thing that you can craft. Gen 2s are craftable only, so that's good. Gen 3s and Gen 1s, you can purchase them, but that's not the end of the world because crafting them sometimes is anyways cheaper. But there's very little things that people craft, right? Unless you're into like very specific trading things that you want to, really do. So in the next expansions, I don't think they need to change the formula. I think they just need to keep expanding about this. I think maybe I think the way that they're going now is this adds more availability for them, their time frame. Because the next expansion could have open world legendaries being a standard, could even be more raid legendaries being a standard, right? They could just add even if they don't touch raids, but they just add another legendary armor to get from raids. One from PvP, one from WW. More generation legendaries, right? I think they'll be able to do that. I think the good thing is that we might get more rewards, which has always been a problem, right? There's not much to go for in the game besides like personal achievements. I think this model can help very well in getting that kind of stuff done. And honestly, I'd like to see how they do the open world, because they've shown that they can create a very compelling and very engaging and very difficult challenge with Dragon's End. I don't expect the next map is going to be like that, because the community clearly is not ready for it. But I would like to see a challenging open world content boss as well. So that's pretty much, I think, all the points that I think I have to say about this. I think the change is good. I know there's a lot of doom and gloom of like, seriously, we're getting like what is amounting to basically like a few patches for other MMOs. But to be honest, you have to live with reality at this point. The reality is this is the content I think that will be able to be deliverable on time and without too much pressure on the studio. Now, yes, it's not a big expansion, but I think I'd rather one mini expansion every year than waiting every 2 to 3 years, So I'm okay with something like this. And this allows them to pick and choose, right? Maybe the next expansion, they could maybe include a raid, because now they have the resources to do that, right? And honestly, this is really it. Marketing, what this is it's Living World bundled into an expansion, right? And I think it's better because you can market an expansion, the term expansion, better than marketing Living World DLC of Guild Wars 2. It doesn't sound good. So I think this is much better overall for them to be able to market the self-contained stories. Look, I love long-term storytelling, but for us, it's honestly a good change of pace to move away from long-term storytelling. I think this allows more characters to shine in the story, because they can pick and choose characters and put them into a story, and that's it. They're in that expansion. The next expansion, they can pick a different cast that's with us as the commander. Now, the one thing is they have to be careful about using the same characters every expansion. I don't think I need to see, as much as Timey, the character, has done a lot in the game, I don't know if we need to see Timey every single expansion, right? In the Secrets of the Obscure, sure, maybe. I think a familiar face wouldn't help. But I would not want to see the same 5-6 NPCs in every single expansion. Let's give and take a little bit. There's quite a lot of NPCs. There's quite a lot of characters. There's plenty of character building to do in this. So that would be like my one take on the storytelling. Just have fun with it, right? Like, we're going to go to see wizards now. And, who knows? Next expansion, it could be something else. But have fun with the fact that we're having self-contained stories now. So, and honestly, the price is cheap. $25 is not that much. I don't have a problem with the amount that we're paying for this expansion. Right, if you were to compare that to a monthly sub, it's costing you $2 for this expansion. $2 a month, right? You're going to have the initial release and then 2 to 3 quarters of releases. That's a full year of expansion. $2 a month, $25 for the whole thing. I don't think that's a problem. I really don't think that is. I think $25 is honestly a generous price for what they're going to deliver. And I'm very much a fan of, this is the price, this is what you're going to get, this is the transparency, and that's it. I'm very much okay with that kind of transparency. I can go in knowing what to expect in the expansion. Now, I think one thing I want to probably touch on is definitely the CMs. I think the CMs, they need to be very careful here. I've seen quite a lot of people talk about this in Discords, and I've even certainly seen this on streams where they would really like to know the difficulty of the CM. Is it a Harvest Temple CM difficulty? Is one of them going to be that level of difficulty or not? And I think that's important for Aina to actually address, because I can imagine a lot of raiders or speedrunners would like to hopefully be prepared to know what what are they getting into, right? Because if Anet came out and said, guys, it's not going to be Harvest Temple, this is not going to be something that will take you 6 or 7 days to clear, I think that's okay, because now you've told people what to expect. But if they don't, and you go in and you expect it to be something and it's not, I think that can create a lot of disappointment. So I think they definitely need to be careful here. They need to kind of set expectations for some people, because some people will be okay. Yeah, okay, it's not Harvest Temple, that I can live with that, right? Or it's like, oh, it is Harvest Temple, great. Let's get ready for it, right? But if you go in not knowing what to expect, it could be disappointing if it's not to the level that you think it could be, right? So that's the thing on the CMs. So overall, yeah, I think this yearly expansion is going to be good. It's $2 for a month, 2 maps, 2 fractals, 2 maps, 2 strikes, 1 fractal, CMs that come forward, a sort of battle pass reward system, a vault system for prizes that you can even get from the gem store. Things like that are amazing. I like that. A self-contained story is pretty nice because we can now tell any different story that we want to see. And honestly, I think this model will probably help very well for ANET. I think they've taken off the pressure from the elite specs. They've taken off the pressure from this Elder Dragon stuff. And honestly, the Elder Dragon stuff really didn't do them any justice because they really couldn't balance it, right? I think each dragon was treated as its own expansion and it kind of just cost them. So it is what it is. I love the Elder Dragon arc. Of course, there have been a lot of hits and misses with it, but I really wish there was more to it. But unfortunately, that just didn't be the case. And honestly, a dragon is very hard to balance the threat with. I think, honestly, much smaller but powerful beings are probably going to be much better to have engaging encounters with than the dragons. So, many expansions also means yearly mainstream press, which shines more frequent light on the game. And that's also a big thing. I think that's what's hurt them a lot, is that they are very, and honestly, their marketing is not their best, okay? I think they need some improvement in their marketing. They certainly do. They have had someone who's recently become their marketing, or has taken a marketing role. Bog Otter, for those who don't know, he's a streamer. So there's someone who might know a thing or two about marketing joining their team. So yeah, I think definitely this allows them to put more press on their game. Yes, absolutely. There is a more frequent press release. There's more frequent marketing, more drops, more things, because now they could do something like every single 3 months, or without having this long stretch of 5-6 months before we get an announcement of a living world, right? Because that's honestly the reality. If you think of the context, we had Guild Wars 2 come out in 2012, and then the living world story kicked off technically in late 2012 to all the way till start of 2014. Then we had nothing from 2014 all the way to the end of 2015 or the start of 2015, right? And they were doing a lot of QL changes for sure, and this was still what they were big into the esports stuff. But there's a long gap in Living World Season 1 to Season 2. And we had Season 2 as a catalyst to the expansion Heart of Thorns. Heart of Thorns comes out, we directly get into Season 3. Heart of Thorns comes out in 2015. Season 3 comes out right after that. And then we get then we get Path of Fire immediately into 2017. So that was kind of a very quick, short burst of expansion and Living World that came out. And then after Path of Fire, we get into Living World Season 4 in late 2017, all the way till 2018. And then the game just goes silent again. And then we don't get anything until we hear about the layoffs and then Iceboot Saga. So those long-term, cuts have really destroyed ANET's momentum. ANET's always been about getting momentum. I think that's been a frequent thing, is they've always destroyed, or somewhat the momentum has always been destroyed for ANET. And I think it's important that they use these yearly expansions to keep building and building and building. Meaning they're always in the spotlight, right? There's always something right around the corner. So there it is. Those are my takes about this. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. You can also watch me on stream. You can follow me here on YouTube, or you can check out my stream. All the links are below. You can catch us live every Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And right now we're doing a promotion for the game. We're doing a weekly Friday giveaway. We're giving away 2 of the expansions, 2 Guild Wars 2 Secrets of the Obscure expansion packs, and you can check us out every Friday or Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, any of those days. So yeah, thank you guys. Thank you, YouTube. And until next time, I will see you when I see you. Take care. Love you all.